Hey guys, I'm Voilin and welcome to my series in which I show you guys how to build a video player inside of Godot with FFmpeg. In this video I'll be going over setting up the GD extension, which is a little bit of work, and I'll keep this introduction short because this video is already quite long. So yeah, if you want to see part 1, check the description for the link to the playlist, and let's start. Okay, so let's start implementing the GD extension. Right now, we are on the Godot-cpp GitHub page. I'll try to remember to add a link in the description, but it's quite easy to find. Just type in Godot-cpp in Google, and normally that's the first thing you should see pop up. There's also a GDExtension C++ example page, but you don't really need to use this page because there's also some examples inside of the GDExtension files themselves. So what we need to do is we go to code and we copy the link again, but we are using Git. This is also a Git repository, and that's something I did not really go over of why I'm using Git for this project. Git is a versioning system. You can, by example, the commits that we've made. Right now there's a commit for readme because I changed some text. I see it as kind of like a checkpoint system. If I manage to break my code completely, I can go back to a previous version where everything still used to work, or I can look and see the changes between different versions to see like, okay, this is probably what is messing everything up. That's the main reason why I use it, and the GitHub integration is just a helpful thing to have a backup. If something were to happen with your project, there will be a copy, at least from your last commit. It will be available online, and that's a very helpful thing to have. It also makes sharing code a lot easier. We have these folders, and in the GDExtension folder, we need to put Godot-cpp repo. So we go to our terminal, and let's make this a little bit bigger so it's easier for everybody to see. So git submodule adds, we paste in the link, and then we need to put specify the place, location where you want to put it, and we want to put it in GDExtension, and you also need to specify the folder name itself, and we will go for Godot_cpp. I use underscores and not like the minus sign because sometimes that causes trouble. Let's add that. And then there's one very specific thing that we need to do, because if you don't do this, it won't work. So we go into our source control in VS Code, and we change the branch. Right now it's on the master branch, but we're using Godot 4.2. But they're already working on 4.3, which is the master branch. So we go in here and we go to origin 4.2. We click on here, the files will update, and then don't touch it anymore. You will see there are two new files, so a git submodule file, and in here you will see all the submodules that you add to your project. A submodule is basically you add the code of an existing project to your project, and it will stay linked in some way. So if there is an update in that branch or in that repo, you will also receive the changes. We will have to do the same thing for FFmpeg, but that will probably be for the next episodes. In this episode, I'll mainly focus on setting up the GD extension and creating a build system. Let's add these, and for the commit message, if you go into, I have a plugin called Git Graph. And with this extension, I can basically see all the updates. So I had basic project setup. That's a commit from last time, from part 1. Update git ignore, and that was basically what the first thing that we did. Just add some extra lines to the file. If you click on here, we can see red is what went away, green is what, well, green yellowish is what we added, and normal lines are things that did not change at all. You can also see there's a plus here and there's minuses where the code went away. It makes sense. It's a little bit getting used to in the beginning, but it saves a lot of time if you learn how to use Git correctly. You don't need to use it. I use it because it's just more convenient. Okay, so you will see we have this new folder in GDExtensions called Godot-cpp, the one that we created. If you go to tests and we go to source, you can see some example files. So you have register types and some examples. So if you look in the example, you will kind of be able to tell how GDExtensions work, how to add functions. For example, this is a function, bind methods. You need to have this. If you are extending from a class, you need to have this because this is what makes certain that the functions that you create inside of your C++ code, that they are accessible from your Godot application. Without these bind methods functions, you won't be able to use your functions or access your variables. For example, if you want to add a variable, you need to have an add property, then the property info, which variant it is, the name itself, and then the setters and getters. Take a look in this if you want to have more of an idea of how it works. I will close this for now, open my files again, and in the folder GDExtensions, I'll create a new folder and I'll call this Gozen because that will be the name of the GDE extension. So let's create this. We need to add a SC construct. So construct, because Godot uses cons. I won't work in this script yet, but we need this to be able to compile the GDE extension together with the Godot-cpp code, because this is basically like, you can compare this Godot-cpp thing as the glue which connects GDE scripts with C++. In our main folder, we create a new file, and I'll just call this build.py. In here we need to import OS because we will os.change dir, and we need to go to the GDExtensions, GDExtension folder, and in the Gozen folder. The main reason why I'm making this script is, if I were not to make this script, I will have to go into the, open terminal, cd to GD, cd means change directory. It's a Linux command. I think that's also how Windows works, but don't quote me on that. Then we have to go in here and then run cons and all the variables that it needs to compile Godot, because it's basically the same commands that it uses. More on that later. Let's go back to the main folder. Let's remove this, clear this a little bit. So in this, we change the directory, so change directory to the Gozen folder, which is important. And from here out, we will do os.system. I have some paper notes here, just so I remember what to say. We need to run cons and -j. After this, you have to specify the number of threads and cores you want to use. If you know your CPU and you know you have like 4 cores, or you have no idea what to use, if you know, put a number. I have 12 threads available. I use 10 for compiling because that saves a lot of time. If you don't know and you don't want to make any mistakes, just leave it out. And always do -1. You always need to save at least one thread or 1 core, because else your system will start lagging a little. And we need to have the target, and for working inside of Godot editor, we need target template debug. If you want to have the GDExtension for compiling a release build, you just change this by release. The reason why I have this kind of scripts inside of Gozen, I'm using a build script in the main folder, but I have another thing. So I will, for example, print, what do you want to do? And then I have the options like print one build GDExtension, and then inputs. So if you run this, so Python builds, you will have an input. If I press 1, nothing will happen because I did not make any if statements, but that's basically how we can extend on this system, but that's for later. So let's remove this code, and this is the only thing that we need for now. A very simple build script. But now we go to the real build script, which is scons and that's a lot more complicated. In this construct file, first we need to, in the Gozen folder, we need to add a new folder called src source, because we need to have a folder where we save all the C++ files. Again, we import OS for this, and now it gets a little bit, well, right now it's still not too complicated because we don't have to deal with FFmpeg yet, and that will save some time. But basically we need to get the environment. So the environment is basically conscript. And now we need to specify the main, like the main construct file. If you go into Godot-cpp, normally there should be a construct file. So we need to lead to that place. So we go out of this folder, because right now we're in the Gozen folder. So we go out with a double dot. So we're in the GDExtension folder. Then we need to go to the Godot-cpp folder. So Godot-cpp. Conscript, I think that should work. And we also need to specify the construct file. So really be certain that you have the capital letters correct. So with this we get our environment, our build environment. And now we need to environment, we need to append a C++ path. This will basically point towards where all our files are. Okay, so src. So this will basically point towards this folder that's for now completely empty, not for long. And I also want a destination directories, because if we compile the applications, we will get shared object files, or on Windows, by example, DLL files, which are basically library files. We need to put them inside a Godot project. So in src from the main Godot project, let's create a new folder. And let's call this one bin. You can call it whatever you want. I call it bin because it makes more sense. And then Gozen because of the Gozen GDExtension. Like I try to keep the naming schemes a little bit similar. So we need to specify this path. So we go out of this folder. So we're in the GDExtensions folder again. We go out one more time. So we're in the core folder. And then we go into the src, the bin, and then the Gozen folder. And that's basically all we need to do. These are some of the basic things set up. So we have our construct file from Godot itself, so it knows how to build everything. And now something you don't need to do, but if you start working on your build files a little bit more and start having different build options, this will be kind of helpful. Jobs, so the number of jobs, so scons minus j, the j stands for jobs, basically cores and such. So for this arguments dot get, if the jobs amount is not given, it will use for platform. If your platform argument is not given, we change this to Linux. If you're using Windows and you will only compile on Windows, please change this to Windows. I'm using Linux and I think most of you are, so I don't think that will be a problem. And yeah, we will also need to use like Ming W and such, but that's for later. That's something for the FFmpeg side of things. Be prepared for that. So for the rest, we only need to add a, to the source, we add a glob. I won't go too much in detail about this, but this also gets the C++ files inside of the Gozen source folder. The only thing that we need to describe now is the lib path of where it needs to save the files to. And for that, so lib path, we will do some formatting with the code. So we have our first variable and then lib Gozen. Again, change the Gozen part with anything you like. Then we have another variable and another variable. And now we will format this. So we have more, well, yes, so the actual string for the lib path is fully correct. This first variable should be the lib path that we, the destination there that we made here above. Let's add this. Next up, we need the environment suffix. You will soon see what this does. And then we need another environment called sh lib suffix. Don't worry too much about this for now. Will make sense more later on. So then we need another variable, shared lib, shared library, the path, and src. So basically we're taking this and we're taking the code from in here and we add it to a shared library. And then the only thing that needs to happen is default shared lib, and this will basically make the whole thing. So shared lib. If we run python build, so build.py, we'll basically be running this script, which will run this construct script inside of here, which will create a file that goes into bin gozen. So let's see if everything works. Sconscript not defined. Sconscript. So we have an error on line 3. So this is not working. Okay, and yeah, the reason why it's not working is because this should be a capital letter. So normally this should build just fine now. The first time that you build, it will take some time because it will basically create all the kind of object files inside of here. And in Gen, this is a new folder that appeared. It will create all the classes and such, and this is what we will need to get auto-completion working inside of our own C++ scripts. So for this, just sit back, relax, this takes some time, even with 10 threads. I'm filming this kind of late, it's like 9, almost 9:30. I'm never really awake this late. So in the meantime, let's take this time to thank my Ko-fi supporters. Without them, this is not possible at all. So thank you very much. If you want to support this series or my future projects series that I will make in the future tutorials and so on, or you want to support Gozen or me personally, visit my Ko-fi page and become one of my supporters. I really appreciate all the support that I'm getting. And perfect timing. It just finished. Now, normally, if we go into our source folder, we will see this script. So we have libgozen.linux.templates, debug, and so on. Okay, so let's take a look again to this part here. So our lib path, our first variable that we inserted was basically destination directory. So the path, then we had libgozen, and I see Linux, and that's basically because of this suffix that we chose. And then we have sh lib suffix. In here we create a new file, so let's call this gozen.gdextension, and in here we need to specify certain things. If you go into the test folder in Godot-cpp, you will see that there's also, normally there should be in projects, there is a example.gdextension. You could copy this, let's just write it from scratch. So when you start up Godot, the first thing that it will do is also go through all the .gdextension files to see which parts, which libraries need to be added to your editor instance. So we need to add configuration. In here we basically need to have the entry symbol, and that's something that you will see soon. Well, soon. That's something you will see later on. So we have our entry symbol, and let's just call this Gozen library init. Then we have our compatibility version, which is kind of compatibility minimum. So if you were to use this GDExtension, by example, this is made for 4.2. If you want to use this as 4.3, normally this should not cause any issues. You can go to future versions, but not the previous versions. So we put this on 4.2 because we will use 4.2. They also made a new thing, reloadable. And if you set this to true, normally if you make changes inside of the GDExtension, the editor will also check the new code and add the new things. So if this file changes, your shared object or your DLL, it will reload everything so we can have direct access to all the new functions that you've added without having to restart the entire editor, which is helpful to say the least. And then we need to add libraries, because how does this GDExtension script file know that it has to use this? First of all, let's copy the name of this file. Let's paste it. And now we have to add linux.debug, debug, x8664, and we make it point to this file. But this file is in the folder res, because everything inside of your main directory of your Godot project is called res. Then bin goes in, and that's it. So you will need to have this for you, for your release as well. So let's add release template release, and we can copy these. If you select the first Linux here, Control D, Control D, Control D, then we have all the 4 Linux were selected. Let's change this, and let's change this to Windows. And I think that's everything we need to do except for this part. So only this part needs to be changed to DLL. And that's everything. The 64 is basically saying that it's a 64-bit library and not a 32-bit. And for the very few people who may use macOS, I don't know how to compile FFmpeg for macOS because I don't have a Mac. But we can copy this. Again, same thing. Ctrl D, Ctrl D, Ctrl D. Let's change this to Mac OS. The only thing you need to do with this is the x86. We need to remove that. And over here as well. And we need to, oh, not over here. That's something I don't quite know. But I know that it ends with framework, and normally you need some other files as well. But again, I'm not really a Mac guy, so I have no idea. So I'll just comment this out, mock comment. This is basically all we need to tell Godot that there's a GD extension and it can get all the files necessary from this address. So let's save this file. Let's close this. And in this construct file, we don't need to touch this anymore for this episode. Next episode, when we implement FFmpeg, we need to add just a couple lines of code. Yeah, especially for Windows. Windows is just, yeah. In the src folder, we need to create a new script. So let's create a new file. Register types.hpp. So hpp is basically a header file for C++ programs. I won't go too much into details about like the whole C++ code stuff. C++ is not too difficult. It just takes some getting used to. So I'm, by example, using Pragma once, but if you look in the example project, they don't use that. They use if and def or something. Yeah, no, in the H file, in the header file, if and def, example class, define. So you can use this strategy as well. It really depends on compiler to compiler. Some compilers accept Pragma once, some don't. So if you have issues with this, just try this approach. If you use this approach at the end, normally you need an end if as well. So yeah, just so you know. Yeah, let's close the example file. Let's minimize this as well. So in in register types.hpp, what do we need? Well, we need to include some stuff. And in here we will have our first issue. So we need to include, we need to include Godot-cpp. I think we need first GDExtension interface. Interface.h dot. And normally that should work. And then include db.hpp. For me, the auto-completion is kind of slow every now and then. But you can see there is an error. Include errors detected. Please update your include paths. Squiggles are disabled for this translation unit. So cannot open source file, Godot-cpp, classes, global constants, hpp. This is normal. The way to fix this is basically we go into our Explorer again. Not in the Explorer. Ctrl-Shift-P and then edit configurations. So as long as you have the GD extension, the extension for C++, CPP. Oh, it appeared, so we need this one. For people using Arch, you need a specific thing because else you won't have access to this. So you need CodeOS Marketplace, CodeOSS Marketplace. If you don't have that one, you won't be able to get the C++ stuff. But I have that, so that's okay. So Ctrl-Shift-P, edit configurations in UI, why not? And then we go to include paths. Normally there should be one already. So we have workspace /*. Let's copy this one, add this one, and then GDExtensions. Let's make certain we don't have capital letters. Godot-cpp. So that's one of them. We need a couple more. Includes the gen folder. And there was another one. So we need gen includes, and I think also source. So let's just add that one, cannot hurt, src. So let's click out of it. If you don't click out of it, sometimes it just deletes everything again. But normally the error should be gone. So it works. So with our include paths updated, let's copy this line because we need to include two more. So we need to also have the definitions. So defs, and then Godot itself. So it's a lot of boilerplate for this as well. You can just copy the register types and just adjust some certain things. I just like to type it myself and go over it so you understand exactly what's going on. So we will always be using the namespace for Godot. The main thing that this does is that we don't need to, for example, we want a Godot string, we don't need to do this. We can directly use string without the Godot column, and then the variable or the class. And then we will need two voids. We need to initialize the functions and the classes that we create, and we need to initialize them. Initialize. So initialize Gozen library init module. This will need a module initialization level, and let's call this p level, and we need to uninitialize as well with the same module initialization level p level. Yeah, I think that's about it. So let's copy these lines. Let's head back into our source folder, register types cpp. So we create, this is the header file, and then the cpp file is basically where we put all the actual code. You can have code inside of registers HPP, like in header files. It's not recommended. I've run into issues with that as well. So in this file, we first need to include register types.h, because else it does not know which header file to get from, like which functions for the header file we need to actually populate. Let's paste these, and normally we'll put a class name here with double column, but because this is not made inside of class, that's not needed. More on that later. I'll go over the very basics of C++ so people know what's going on. It's not too difficult. So let's minimize this again because we don't need it. And let's create a function thing. So everything is in brackets inside of C++. So first initialize Gozen library init module. We also need to do the using namespace Godot. And now if p level, so the initialization level, if that is not modularization level seen, then we don't continue, then we just return. And just for reference, we will need a class db and register class. This is something we will need. Right now, we cannot really use it because we don't have a class. If we have a class, for example, called video, we'll put video here, but we don't have that for now. Let's comment this out. It's stuff for later. And then for the initialize Gozen library init module, we basically need the same thing like here, and that's about it. We can add extra stuff here if we need stuff to happen when everything gets like thrown away for memory management and such, but for now we don't need to use this at all. So we need to add an extern C file. Let's add the brackets again. This will basically tell the compiler that this part is basically written in C, and this will be a capital because C is important. So we have a GDExtension bool, GD exports. Basically, these are all definitions and things from the Godot stuff itself. Don't worry too much about this. This is really just boilerplate. And we need to have our Gozen library init. You remember we wrote this inside of the GDExtension file. So we have Gozen library init. So that should basically be the same as here, because that's what it will be searching for inside of the shared object file or DLL file. And for initializing this, because this is supposed to be a GDExtension bool, yeah, it gets complicated. It gets complicated real quick. For this, I think we should just copy the code from the test folder. I don't really see a point too much in this. Register-types.c++. So you can see in the example file, for example, they have example ref, example minimum, example virtual. They have a little bit of everything, so you can kind of know what's like how to do certain things. Yeah, basically, let's copy this. Let's go to our CPP file and let's just paste this. I think we need an extra bracket here, and just for making it clean, let's add an extra tab. You see init object, register initializer, and so on and so on. This says initialize example module. That's not correct for us. Basically, the initialize example module, we need to take this one, because that's our function, and the initialize function, and let's replace them. So basically, an initialize is a terminator, the initializer is initialize. Simple. And this should basically be it. I don't think we need to change anything else inside of here. This is basically, yeah, very much boilerplate. So we can see if everything still works correctly by building. If it says const completed, it does not. So fatal error, register types 8, no such file or directory. Register types.hpp. Okay, so my fault. And normally this should be completely fine. Done building targets. So last part of this video, let's create a new file called video.hpp. In here again, pragma once using namespace Godot, but we first need to include Godot as well, like one of the scripts that we will need to use. So Godot-cpp, and let's just take the control.hpp, and let's also have I think variants, and I want the utility functions. What utility functions does, if we go to this function here, we can see something very helpful. So this will give us access to print rates, a function I made in Godot. Basically, it will give us the utilities to call print, so we can print things inside of Godot, which we will have a quick test in more towards the end of this video when we finally implement this class, because it takes a little bit of time. So we create a class. This class we will call video, and it will be a public resource. We made this class, but not really, because we still need to define the class as a child of resource, because right now Godot for some reason does not know yet what class it is. So video and resource. So right now we created a valid resource. So if you compile this, this won't work yet. This won't work, I just realized, because we don't have a member bind method yet. So let's create a private, let's create a public, and let's create a protected. In here we need, under protected, we need a void bind method. This can be completely empty, we just need to have it. And now this will compile. But first, in register types, let's include video.hpp. And now if we comment this out, normally it will find video class from this file. It does not give any errors, so let's compile. And normally this should work. It doesn't. It's still giving an error. So function definition for GD class not found. I think this should be a static, and for now an inline void, because we're basically put the code in here, which we will change later on, but for now this is normally going to be fine. Let's build again. Okay, now it built it fine. Select the project.godot file, go to disconnected on the bottom. Normally it will try to connect. Let's start it up manually. I'll put it on another screen so it's more visible. And the project should start up fine. So this is a script that we wrote last time. Let's also, can I increase the code? No, can I? Oh yeah, okay, I can increase code like this. Let's hide the output for now. And then ready, let's create a new variable, video. And normally we will have our video class. So video.new, this won't do anything yet. So if you look in what functions video has, it basically has the exact same function as a resource file. If you look at the resource file, well, resource node type, you'll see all the things that we have in here, and from the child objects, like from ref counted and objects, we will also have access to inside of here, because this is basically an extension of resource, of the resource class. In video, let's quickly create a public function. Just for quickly testing things out, and that will be the last part of this video. Let's create a void, and let's call it print something. We will need a string, and the string will be a argument. Let's just call it text for now. One thing we need to do is declare this as an inline void, just to avoid compiling issues or things not running properly. Because this is still in the header file. We need to access utility functions. Let's go for print. Let's take print rich just to make things a little bit more interesting. Let's just make it bold. Let's make it bold for now. Text with a text. Dealing with Godot classes and C++ classes, it gets kind of complicated. I still haven't quite figured out how to do strings properly. I keep finding new ways to do it, and I'll probably update the code to easier results, but this should normally work. This should not cause any problems. But if we compile this now, and we go into our projects, so video, print something, and we add some text because we had some text. So text. If we run this, invalid call, non-existent function print something in base video. That is because we did not specify that this function, print something, is actually part of this class. Because we still deal with kind of like a layer of glue in between, and if you don't specifically say that this function is available, Godot won't know about it. So for this we go to bind methods. Again, class DB. It's basically the same like in register types. We also use class DB to register things. It's basically the interaction layer between the Godot codes, the GDExtension, and Godot itself. Then methods, bind methods. So bind methods. Inside of here we need the methods. Again, open. And then we need the function name, so print something. In here we add inside of the Z method, let's make it a little bit more visible like this. Inside of this Z method we have our text, our function name. And we also have a string called a text that we need to supply. So a text string, you'll soon see why this is needed. And then we also need to specify where this function is. So we go into video. This will be a pointer to it, and print something. And that's basically all we need. If we were to compile now, and when that's done building, we go to our Godot project. If we run it now it prints and it's big. But we created our first class and our first function, and the thing that we entered in here, so this part, a text string. If you were to remove this text and try to type again, this will be the hint. For some reason it's a string to string, so I don't think I should add this string. Let's quickly remove this. Python build, and now it should be correct. So if we run this quickly, so this has a chance to update. And now it says correctly. So a text, and we know what the function does. We also know that it's a void. If you were to return a bool, that's also possible. So let's quickly do that. We return a bool, and let's just always return true. Return true. let's update this function. And once we update this function, let's quickly go in here. Again, texting. And let's also print the result of this function. And normally this should return texting and true. And this is one of the problems that you'll see often. GDEscript bug, native class video not found. Even with the whole tag of a reloadable, there are still issues. GDExtensions is still kind of in a beta state, I think. If you look at the repo, normally it says something about that. Warning, the GDExtension API is brand new in Godot 4.0 and is still considered in a beta state, despite Godot 4.0 itself being released. So they're still working on the GDExtension stuff, but it's working most of the time. And that's also, in the previous video I mentioned that we should start the project through here, through VS Code, because else we don't have access to this log easily. People on Windows normally get the CMD also open up next to the Godot window. On Linux that does not happen, and then this is very helpful, especially when we start dealing with FFmpeg and FFmpeg related errors, because these don't print to the normal outputs, because this is basically a rich text label. This will also give an error right now that prints something. It cannot get return value of call to print something because it returns a void, because it has not properly reloaded yet. Normally if you would restart a couple of times or quickly delete this line and put it back, then everything should be fine, but you will still get the whole compile errors and GDEscript bug native class 99 not found. So I know that this is quite a lot to take in for this whole basic setup of getting GDExtensions to work. Trust me, it gets more complicated very soon the moment that we start dealing with the whole FFmpeg stuff, because for that we will also need a new Git submodule. That's basically, you go in here, FFmpeg. Be certain if you spell FFmpeg that the two F's in front are capital, because the two F's are important. And this is basically another code base that we need to add to our project. If you use Linux, you will see FFmpeg is already installed, and I have 6.1 installed, and that's basically what we will focus the project on as well. So for people on Linux, we don't really need to compile the FFmpeg code itself with the application. On Windows, you need to compile it with your application. So Windows executables will be higher in size compared to Linux. Let's create one more commit, well, a couple more commits. So first, adding git submodule Godot-cpp, and then we select all the codes and we say GDExtension initialization, and I typed it correctly first try. And let's also commit that. And over here you can see push to origin master. That's basically pushing everything to your GitHub repo. So let's press this as well, so our changes are saved. If something happens to our PC right now, we still have our codes that can basically only print something and return true. Yeah. Okay, and that's it. So we have our GDExtension and we have a working video class that we can use inside of the editor, inside of Godot itself. In the next video, I'll be going over how to implement FFmpeg and how to open a video file. I'm not certain if I'll do the two things in one video. Let's see how long it takes. I think it's probably going to be possible, but it will be another very long video. So yeah, hold on tight. We're almost there. Not really. But yeah, once again, thanks a lot to all my Ko-fi supporters. Without them, making these type of long videos and making these tutorials and projects would not be possible. Thank you very much. Again, without your support, it really would not be possible. So yeah, see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching and have a good time trying to make GDExtensions, I guess. Have fun. And hold on tight for the next episodes. Bye bye.